Okay, I think we can get started. Aditya, just ensure that waiting room is enabled for all, so that the participants can come in.
Yeah, I've removed the waiting.
Thanks. Hey, hello everyone. A very good evening, and thank you so much for joining our session today. We're very happy to be kickstarting our sessions for this financial year. For those of you who are new, just to share with you, we just finished wrapping up our previous series on talent and development, wherein we covered sessions related to recruitment in the social sector. How is it that you can build an effective volunteer base, designing a culture within your organization. So these are some of the sessions that were part of that series that we just wrapped up. So we can share a snapshot of the series on chat. Aditya, if you could just put it in, as well as the other series that we conducted in FY22. So you all can have a look at all the recordings as well as resources that we had shared last year. But back to the present. Today we are hosting a session on designing effective programs. To share with you all, this is a part of a larger series that we're conducting on monitoring and evaluation. So this M&E series is going to run throughout the quarter. First session, of course, is on designing effective programs, and we're particularly going to look at it through the lens of how is it that you can build a logical theory of change, LFA, what are the key elements to be included, how is it that you can develop it, and what are the steps to prepare for it. And we're also going to be conducting other sessions around impact reporting, funder expectations on data reporting. So do stay tuned for that as well. Before I go on to introduce our speakers, just wanted to also bring out, because this was also a part of our communication, wherein we said that we will be holding a masterclass post this session. So this session is sort of an introductory as well as an overview, but the next masterclass is going to be a bit more focused. It's also going to be more practical and hands-on, wherein we will be providing guidance and review support based on the LFA and theory of change frameworks that you all develop. So I could also bring this up again towards the end of the session. But just briefly introducing our speaker before I hand it over to him. So we have with us, and Aditya, if you could just move next. So we have with us today Kumar Das. He's the Senior Engagement Manager within our Impact Measurement and Advisory Unit at Sattva. Kumar has 12 plus years of experience in research and evaluation. He's also worked as the Program Policy Manager for IGC India. He's worked as the Senior Technical Consultant for UNICEF India Country Office, wherein he focused on evaluation, research, and policy. He has working exposure with women, children, marginalized communities in several countries, including Afghanistan, India, Nepal, Thailand, Uganda, and United Kingdom. He holds a master's in development studies from IDS, University of Sussex, and an MSc in social policy from London School of Economics. He's currently pursuing his PhD in social policy from University of Bath. So very warm welcome to you, Kumar. Thank you so much to be facilitating our session today. Just a few quick housekeeping announcements. So this is going to be an interactive session. We understand that this is a technical topic, so I think after every few slides, we will take a pause to have a round of question and answer. And our session is getting recorded, so happy to share the session recording once the session is over. But over to you, Kumar.
Thanks, Ashwini. Hi, everyone. Just give me 1 minute. Is it visible, Ashwini?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. As Ashwini actually gave the introduction, so I don't need to. So what I did basically, 1 minute, I just need to give me 1 minute. Okay. Yeah. I thought like before going forward, we thought it's better to have proper agenda settings for this today's discussion. And I thought like it's better to ask in a sense, why really need ToC or LFA by discussing a case study And then we will discuss over LF, but ToC means theory of change, and after that it's the log frame approach, logical framework approach, and then I will offer the terminology and list of resources. And after that, if anyone has any questions or feedback, and we can discuss that. And for this, we keep like 15-20 minutes at the end of the night. But as Ashwini stated, and I also realize it's always helpful, okay, after each section, we can, if you have any question, if you put those things in the chat box, and if you raise your hand, then we can have one-to-one conversation, and I will try to address all your queries. Yeah, I hope it's okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned, in a sense, we all know, okay, in development world, people are investing a lot of money, and there are times you either get a desired result, and there are times you don't. And for this
Hi,
discussion, I
Kumar.
thought like, yeah.
Kumar, sorry to interrupt. I think your voice is slightly unclear and it's
Okay.
breaking.
Sorry, I just put turn off my fan then. Sorry. Okay. So what I'm saying in a sense, for today's discussion, what I was thinking in line, as mentioned, in today's world, everyone is investing in the development world, development sector, and there are times you actually get a desired result, and there are times you do not. And I was thinking, in a sense, for before discussing the whole theory of change and logical framework, to use a case study to understand why we need LFA and theory of change to have a desired result or outcome. So for this, what I did, I used the play pump as a case study. This is one of the huge investment that multiple donor actually made in Mozambique and sub-Saharan African countries. So what exactly happened in initial days in Mozambique, Play Pump actually did a pilot. And we all know, because not only in South Asia, in Sub-Saharan Africa, and also in other parts of the world, that we don't have access to clean water, clean drinking water. And the idea of the play pump, in a sense, that they will install a play pump, and it's basically a community-driven initiative. And the idea was, when the child play, automatically it was connected with a water pump, and there is a device, and because the child is currently playing with the play pump, the water will be stored in a storage tank, and then on the basis of a demand, the water will be available to the community. That was the overall idea. They will see in this picture, okay, what if, because the play pump is this one, okay, where the children are playing, and because of the pressure, the water is start storing into a storage tank, and then because it's a clean water, now people have an access to the clean drinking water in the developing world. But what exactly happened? The pilot was really successful, and everyone started having conversation on this, okay, how successful this story it is actually. But what happened after this? Okay, when they start implementing the program across sub-Saharan Africa and across Mozambique, the the play pump was not able, means the intervention is not able to give the desired result. And by then the donor already invested multi-million USD into that program. And after that, people started criticizing globally for it scaled it up, and they started pointing out, okay, people don't have a proper conversation or the alignment, or don't have a proper planning in place or the implementation plan in place. And this is one of the reason
Hi, Kumar, are you there? I think we lost him. Just give us a second.
the desired result, but without having a proper plan,
Hi,
it's
Kumar.
look like hello. Yeah.
Sorry, I think we lost you for the last couple of seconds.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
my
and I
internet
think
maybe.
your bandwidth slightly.
Okay.
Would you like us to share the screen instead?
Yeah, if you can, that would be helpful then. Sorry.
Sure. Aditya, if you could just pull it up instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also Kumar, if you could keep the speaker slightly closer. Yeah, I think slightly.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Is it fine now?
Yeah, for now it's okay.
Okay. So if you take a look on this slide in the corner left-hand side picture, maybe you have actually want to do a very good job, but with not having a proper plan or implementation guidelines or theory of change, you don't know what you are building out of it. So for this, the picture shows that maybe if you want to build a bridge, but people are discussing maybe you want to build a boat instead. So that was the idea, okay, before discussing the theory of change or the logical framework approach. There are several cases or instances where people actually made huge investment, but they didn't incorporate or discuss the theory of change or don't have a proper log frame approach within that program. And for this, they're not able to get a proper or achieve a desired result. Aditya, if you go to next slide. So before I thought like because I saw your expectation and areas of interest, and I saw the maximum questions you raise over the monitoring evaluation and how we can build an effective system. And as Ashwini already flagged, in the next quarter we will start having conversation more on M&E, and part of that we thought for today's discussion, as Ashwini mentioned, we will only flag the theory of change and the logical framework approach. And before discussing that, I thought like to refresh our all memories. If we all know okay, what monitoring means or evaluation means. But I thought like to flag one thing in a sense, okay, we all know as okay, monitoring is a continuous function where on a systematic basis, you collect data on specific indicators to understand if your intervention or program is actually in the right direction or not, and if you really need to do a mid-course correction in the whole intervention logic. While evaluation in a sense is more into sense after end of the project or within middle also, like mid-course midterm evaluation, you are trying to take a look on the whole design implementation and try to reflect if whatever you want to achieve, is it actually aligned or not, if those things are actually give you the intervention of the activities are able to give you proper outcomes or not, where you are currently standing. And learning basically from monitoring and both evaluation, you can get the learning in a sense during the whole process, what evidence and analysis you started getting in and how effective those designs are, and you can ensure the whole accountability side of it by having a monitoring and evaluation. Aditya, if you can go next. Yeah. So as I mentioned, now we will start having discussion on the whole theory of change, and maximum times before I approach the whole theory of change and logical framework, there are times people get confused in a sense and they feel like both theory of change, ToC and logical framework, means the LFA is more or less same. But we will discuss those things in much later stage. But in the initial stage, what I would like to flag on what theory of change actually is. In a sense, the theory of change explains how activities are understood to produce a series of results that contribute to achieving the final intended impact. But in a sense, simply put in a line, in a sense, writing down what change you are expecting and then working backward and try to understand how that change might come about. Or in other words, we can say a ToC is more look like a outcome-based causal model which articulates underlying assumption and need to be developed, and it can be developed for any intervention. In a sense, suppose you are working for a small project or larger program or at the organization level, you can develop ToC for anything. And for ToC, it's actually help to explain for your program what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve, and why you want to achieve part of it. And there are times what I realize in my experience, people feel like ToC is look like simply filling the boxes like input, output, intermediate outcome, or impact level category. But it's not actually. It is important to ensure that, in a sense, ToC adequately represent what the intervention intend to achieve and why your work will affect people and create a change and how activities are better understood to contribute to a series of results. So ideally, in a sense, ideally, the ToC explain how change is understood to come about rather than simply linking activity to expected results in that line. Yeah. Please go to the next slide. Yeah. So, Michael, the next slide, I will talk more into that, okay, why theory of change is important. Because it helps to have a proper assumption in place, and at the same point of time, while having our assumption about and the desired output in place, we always try to ensure the approach and the contribution to the desired change, and at the same point of time, help systematically think through the many underlying and root causes of development changes. Yeah. Development changes. Yeah. So, and at the same point of time, okay, there are times people always say, okay, like as I mentioned also, logical framework, biological framework, you can prove
Hi,
your theory
Kumar.
of change, the theory of changes. Yeah.
Sorry,
Hello,
sorry to
Ashwini.
come in again. Voice slightly cracking again. Maybe you could switch off your video. I think there are quite a few participants today, so yeah, that's why it might be a
Okay.
little heavy on the bandwidth. You could turn off. Yeah, I think this should be better.
Oh, is it fine now, Ashwini?
Yeah, it's much better.
Okay. So just give me 1 minute also. Sorry for all these mistakes. Yeah. So as I mentioned, in a sense, okay, as I was referring, there are times people actually got confused with LFA and ToC. So using logical framework, in a sense, LFA is one of the most comprehensive way to establish your ToC, which can be used in the many purposes. And we all know the whole how LFA and ToC is aligned. So as I previously mentioned, the theory of change or the pathways of change are drawn up based on certain assumption, which are derived either from a belief or weak evidence or strong evidence. And at the same point of time, if you work in the impact evaluation space, the existing theory of change should be reviewed and revised based on the guided data collection or analysis for the reporting purposes. Okay, but Aditya, could you please go to the next slide? Yeah. So as I mentioned previously, going backward after finalizing your goal or impact level indicators, if you take a look on these 5 stages, you will realize first 3 is the backward one. Like first you identify the long-term goal with the assumption. The second is more into started backward mapping and connected the precondition how you will actually achieve your goal. And then the next step was again identifying the intervention. So if I read like from 3 to 1, it looked like you identify the intervention and you realize, okay, what sort of things you want to do, and then you started putting the precondition and at the same point of time the indicators which actually help you to achieve the long-term goals. So for theory of change, we always work backward. First, you do that long-term goals first. After identifying the long-term goal, you start going backward and then come up with the indicators to measure or explain the narrative part. So then this is the one of the easiest way I thought like to put the details of the all 5 stages by which you can actually create your own theory of change, but focus on the first 3. The 4 and 5 is actually the supporting one. Okay. So now, I will, for this current discussion, we have 2 slides which actually discuss with examples. But before that, I want to emphasize on one thing. Whenever people discuss on the theory of change, now, it always leads to discuss the outcome level indicators or the outcome level mapping. But for today's discussion, we only limit ourselves to outcome, not with outcome mapping. Okay. Now, when we're discussing this whole outcome, it can be happen in different level. It can changes in behavior, relationship, activities kind of thing, or even by this outcome, we want to see changes in other people. It can happen in the immediate, intermediate, or in the long-term outcome. And when I explain you these things with the example, it will be easy for you also to understand okay, what I'm referring for or referring to. So our immediate outcome around understanding and influence it between, like if I give this middle wala thing is actually help you to understand, okay, even if you have an access to information, that doesn't mean access to information can be a long-term outcome. It should be either fall into the immediate outcome or intermediate outcome category. And this because of this access to information, there are times in the long run there is changes in behavior in the development actors in place. So for this, when people referred okay, access to information, we really need to think through, in a sense, with access to information, maybe you have access to banking services. With access to banking services, you can have more, in a sense, access to savings, and access to savings can lead you to more decision-making power in the household or in the business. That's it. So when we're referring these intermediate, immediate, or long-term outcome, it's always helpful to define what to understand the whole causal pathway. And don't consider always having an access to something is the end point. Having access to something may lead to something else. So that way you can come up with a better theory of change for your whole program design. And as I mentioned before today's discussion, we will not discuss outcome mapping, but I would request if you have time, and in the end, I will share the bibliography. If you take a look on the whole IDRC document on the whole outcome mapping and the theory of change, that will give you a proper clear-cut idea. Aditya, if you go to next slide. Up next. Okay, so there are two examples. Okay, one example, in a sense, I want to portray the electronic vehicle sector, where suppose the government want to reduce emission in India by promoting electronic vehicle. And Aditya, go to next slide. And another Aditya, go to next slide. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, and this example is more into that. No, that's the previous one, Aditya. Oh, but do you want me to share? That would be helpful, I think. No worry, I will be sharing. I'm sharing, Aditya, because otherwise it will. Is it visible?
It's
Yeah.
just loading.
So, oh, is it visible now?
No. Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay, sorry. So as I mentioned, there are two examples I used while explaining the theory of change. One is for the EV sector in India, where you will find I put with every output, I put an assumption or belief kind of thing. And at the same point of time, because at the next example is on women and access to digital finance and improving their whole financial health outcome. And I did have a proper agency framework available with me. So for this, I didn't opt for any assumption at all, because, and why I didn't, I will explain it in a later stage when I explain the first EV sector and after that digital finance. That will help us in more to get a proper clarity. So if you take a look on this slide, in the whole intervention area, I talk in three different things. One is in the top-down intervention. In a sense, I'm working, suppose, closely with partners like CBOs, NGOs, or the government, Niti Aayog, or the private players. At the same point of time, bottom-up intervention, where I work closely with the master trainers or doing some community level awareness initiative, why the people need to opt for the EV. And the last one is because I already have the top-down intervention stream and the bottom-down intervention stream, but currently I don't have enough evidence on the technology side or the awareness side of it. So what I thought, I also do some sort of intervention in the evidence side of it also, which actually helped me to get a proper clarity. Okay. So in the top down, you will find I did three different intervention. One is at the whole policy level, where I work closely with government, where I start coming up with landscape document, standard operation protocol, or I started having developing guidelines, action plans for the EV sector with the government and private sector. At the same point of time, in the second, if you take a look on this, I started working with in the partnership level, where I closely started having MOU or the partnership available for the sector. And at the same point, at the last, I started thinking in a sense for the whole system, in a sense, in the infrastructure side, what are the changes or what are the new things I can operate for? So if you take a look on this whole three different intervention, you will find the key outputters different. In a sense, when I was working, as I mentioned, when I am working with the policy level, I emphasized on the SOP, guideline, action plan, etc. While I'm working on the partnership, it's more look like the partnership conversation initiated and the partnership documents are available or MOU actually completed. And each and every category I come up with an assumption. In a sense, if you take a look at the whole policy space, I clearly mentioned, okay, in a sense, policy support is still indispensable for lowering the barrier for adoption. A supportive policy environment enable market growth by making electronic vehicle appealing to consumer. This is my assumption. Because I put my assumption in a sense, for any program in electronic vehicle or anything, policy support is required. And if I have that, maybe that actually helped me to put the SOPs and guidelines and action plans in place. Same way, if you take a look on the number 4, the bottom-up intervention, where I emphasizing on the capacity building part or initiative or the OEMs, because I have the partnership in place or the government policies or the action plan in place, I started working in the bottom-up approach. What I did, I started working on mainly on the creating awareness, started training people, and with maybe for the NSDC, okay, because there is a labor resource needed when you are opting for the electronic vehicle. So what are the things I need to do? I mentioned here. And then I put a proper assumption like extensive capacity building program with reference to both manpower and infrastructure augmentation available, intensive training comprising national and international best practices and technology options of all the associated stakeholders. So that way I started narrating all the details. Now, you see in the key output area, there are several outputs. But when I actually take a look on the immediate or intermediate outcome, you will only find in a sense, maybe policy guidelines on 3, 4, and where I specifically mentioned guidelines on institutional mechanism for policy rollout, roles and responsibilities of key department is available already. Because it's a policy level intervention, and policy level, we don't come up with percentage of people initiative because it's depend on the program. In the next program, in the next example, you will find where I spoke more about the percentage and the number. And in the whole outcome part, in the immediate or intermediate section, I actually emphasize more on the infrastructure, what sort of things I can do, means we can do in the program level. And because you remember, I clarified, okay, there is a training and job or skill development program going on. And we already specified new jobs for drivers, charging station, operator, and service mechanism are created. So if you take a look on the flow, So rather than I explain, if you take a look on the, for instance, I work in the policy level, I work in the partnership level, I work in the systems level, more in the infrastructure. What exactly happened? Because I work in the policy, I have SOPs guidelines, because I have the partnership available with me. Now government is willing to start working on the roles and responsibilities, who will work on what, like discom, transport or industry. Like I started doing the training and skill building activities. Now what happened, because government agreed, now maybe new jobs created already. Same happened in the research. See, I mentioned in a sense, maybe I did a lot of landscape assessment, supply chain assessment kind of thing as an output. But with that, what happened? Industry player on board, because we now start having the evidence, and evidence actually help industries to understand where they should focus. Okay, by the same logic, from the immediate to long term, what I can do, like I come up with a regulatory framework. Even you have a policy, government agreed, and government divided the distribution of work and come up with the rules and responsibility guidelines. But as a long term, I thought like we should put like maybe all new home and workplace parking are EV ready. One. Second can be, now you have policy, maybe the state and central come up with a EV board, electronic vehicle board, and established and constituted. And the third is come up with a regulatory framework. Having a policy and the whole regulatory framework is a two different thing. Regulatory framework come under more in the long-term outcome. And now with this all long-term outcome, what I can do now, maybe 100% electrification happened, or maybe reduce, there is a reduction in emission. So do you have any question till now, or else I do the same thing for the next slide, where I talk on the financial health and women financial health and access to finance? Let me know. Because I can't see.
Yeah, we did have one question that came in. I think it was related to the play pump.
Okay, what is, 1 minute. What is the, could you please repeat me the question? I didn't get the question. Okay.
Sure. It has just come in. Just looking, it had come in on chat.
I'm also in the chat.
No worries. I think I'll just pull that up. But currently, there's a question from Rameshwar that says, "What are the risks?"
Okay, what are the risks? See, 1 minute. I'm going to the back slide. Okay. Yeah, the risk can be, because why I put the assumption. With assumption, it is always discuss the risk. I didn't. Be thankful for the question, because in the next slide I will discuss that. Okay, so it always helpful to put the assumption and risk together. And as when you are putting the assumption, see this one. In the first assumption I put as a belief, policy support is always required, and it's still indispensable for lowering barrier for adoption. What the risk should be? Maybe the government is not willing, even if you have a good program like play pump, but government said it's expensive in the installation. Who will work? And suppose for the play pump, you may install the play pump at the school and children started playing. If something happened, if the play pump got damaged, but you didn't take care of the OEM side, means maintenance side of it, so then what? And it's expensive, government may back out. So those are the risks you need to put with all the assumption. And maybe government agreed, but later on with the change in the whole policy landscape, they shut down the program. So even if you have a partnership in place, as I mentioned, a partnership initiated with the government and private sectors, but people said, okay, we don't need an electronic vehicle, we should opt for ethanol things now. So, so it's very scary. So when you're developing the assumption theory of change, put the assumption and risk. And I was thinking to share the details in the later phase. And thanks for bringing that. So here actually. So as I mentioned, this is actually like in explaining you, and then I will come up. Okay, what are the things you should do? Okay, Rameshwar, is it answer your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. There are any other question? 1 minute.
Yeah, there are a couple of others on chat.
Okay, I'm saying, does TOR needs to be visited once finalized? Are you referring TOR or TOC? So if you're referring the TOC, TOC really should be visited, need to be visited after every 2-3 years. Because why? Even see, every organization have a vision and mission. But what happened? Suppose in 2023, when you are developing your theory of change based on your vision and mission, you clarified the each and every step, and each and every step, because you have suppose 6-7 program going on, and this 6-7 different program actually help you to achieve that theory of change at the organization level. But after 3-4 years, maybe you have enough different program. Do you think that TOC will be still valid to achieve your vision and mission? So for this, as I mentioned here, all in the next slide, you will find I actually emphasized that TOC should be and need to visit like every 2-3 years for an organization perspective, also for the program perspective. If you are rolling out like a 5 to 10 years long-term program with the government. Okay. Yeah, the last 37. One minute, sorry, story to citizen from intervention to impact. Okay. Now, if you take a look on the first one, it's not an intervention. If you take a look at the first 2 lines, theory of change graphic and the statement, I mentioned is just imagine I want to reduce the emission and want to achieve 100% electrification of the transport sector. And for this, I put like all the assumptions also. See, what I mentioned, electric mobility has the potential to improve the efficiency, affordability, and sustainability of the transport. This is a statement. And then I put with top-down and bottom-up intervention, whatever I am currently doing, if market is available for growth, if favorable policy environment is available, if infrastructure and the systems are in place, then maybe 100% electrification of transport sector is possible. So now, as I mentioned, backward, what I'm saying in the impact level, so in a sense, 100% electrification of transport sector and reduction the emission. For doing that, what are the things I need to do in the long run? Maybe government come up with a regulatory framework, or central board need to be constituted, or maybe workplace or new apartment have electronic vehicle ready charging points available, and industry players started with the first and movers in the pilot. So what exactly happened? Because I identify if I do these 3 things, where I mobilize private sector, come up with a regulatory board and the policy mechanism, maybe things will improve. Then I start working backward. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that way, because as I mentioned, walking backward in a sense, when I'm explaining in a sense, because I started talking on the whole intervention side of it, because I already have the impact level indicators available. The same thing you will find in my next slide. 1 minute. Yeah. See, what I mentioned, in a sense, the goal is all about, I really want to understand and improve the financial health outcome of women and try to provide them access to market, including digital platform economy. So what was my goal basically? As I mentioned, advancing women economic empowerment, mainly for about 3.5 million SSG women, by increase their access to resource, including market, building their financial health, and enhance their agency and representation in enterprises. Because there are 2 constraints till now we know, because I already mentioned I did that women economic framework analysis. where I realized why women are not visible in the economic front. There are household factors, there are context factors, where social norm policy can play a pivotal role, and at the same point of time, intra-household allocation, maybe because of the social norms, the work got allocated in a different way, and the resource got allocated in a different way. Women are not even represented properly within the structure, in a sense, in the women economic empowerment. So now I did my evidence synthesis, diagnostic study, everything before come up for a ToC. And I really want to improve women's position and representation in enterprise. In the right-hand corner column, you will find I actually emphasize on the whole financial health outcome, financial security, what I mean by financial health outcome, everything is written here. So now, if I opt for the outcome level, what I mean in a sense, how to actually improve women's agency and representation. Either they should have an access to increase of income and access to resources, and if both of the things happen together, maybe they are able to manage their day-to-day finance properly and having their income and expense shocks, and at the same time, they should have their increased agency at the household level relating to the decision making. If these three things always interlinked. Having an access to income doesn't mean you have control over the resources. So with income, you need to have the control over the resources. With control over the resources, you need to have an increased agency in the decision making, both at the financial and business or at the household level. If all these three things at the outcome level happen properly, maybe that will increase women's economic empowerment. And then what will be my outcome level indicators? My outcome level indicators can be divided in n number of things. Immediate, intermediate outcome, like as I mentioned, women increase of income. See, now we need to read from the lower to up. Suppose increase in women in selling new product in a digital platform that actually help women to increase their buyer capacity. That will actually increase their uptake to the loan, because now you started selling more and now you have n number of other things like financial planning. You have all other sets of access to finance and formal credit details. Now your annual income increase. Same happen. Maybe women don't have access to digital resources. Now maybe women have an access to phone itself, or now they started having financial planning and regular expenses in place. And this all translate into this six category. You will find, like in a sense, when more women are earning an income by engaging in business activities using the marketplace. Same happen, more women are operating their account. As I mentioned, having an access to income doesn't mean you have a control over finance or you are operating by yourself. So for this, I specifically mentioned operating your accounts by their own, not by someone else. At the same point of now, we have an access to mobile phone. Maybe more women have confidence by using the digital financial services, or more women are participating in the decision making of business at the household level or self-income or household level decision. So you just subdivided and you realize on that point of time, if I subdivided, is it actually linked or not? Now, because I already designed my theory of change to explain you in a better way, just imagine a scenario. Women have access to income. Because of the access to income, maybe they start having a formal linkages to formal credit. Because with the formal credit, they are insurance product. Women now opt for more savings. With the savings, they started participating in the decision making. So it's more looking like a causal friend, but those causal boxes, the causal indicator also need to be subdivided, where you really need to put, like, is it an intermediate outcome or is it a long-term outcome? Providing women access to information or access to formal credit is easy, but but having an access and then controlling over their finance is very hard. So those things should be in the long-term outcome. And then I discussed what are the input level things I discussed. As Ramesh, I think Ram actually flagged why the risk is not there mentioned. So for this, the next slide will help you. See, even the previous slide, I just give you like a intervention mota mota wala thing. Okay, these are the areas I'm actually intervening. But in the next slide, I come up with a maybe comprehensive intervention activity details. Okay, what sort of activities I will do to address women issues in finance or improve their participation in the economic empowerment sector. What I thought, I will create a marketplace and then I lay down what sort of activities I will do. Same thing for and in marketplace and SSG, there are two kind of product. One is the farm product, and another one is a non-farm product. So I come up with detailed information, what are the activity I will conduct, both for these two category. And at the same point of time, I want to develop a financial product to enhance savings for women. I clearly mentioned what are the things I want to do. And then financial service provider. So see, if you take a look on these four boxes called activities, it clearly mentioned each and every step, and it's more look like a comprehensive way. But what happened if you put all sort of details? There are time people may not. There are time people who are not comfortable with your program may feel like it's too much details. I really want to see the larger picture, and this is the larger picture for you, where I only called what is my input, what is my output, but what is my intermediate outcome and long-term outcome. But you should have the clarity, what are the activities you want to have or put in place for your own work, okay? And then I put the whole impact level things and the outcome level details more in the long term and medium term. You'll find that women have increased agency at the household decision making. Women have increased ability to manage day-to-day finance and cope with income and expense shocks. So like it's more look like if you have a proper frame, and with that, if you come up with the proper details of each and everything in a logical way, it help you to implement the program or achieve your desired goal or impact category indicators improperly. And theories of change is the one which actually help you to have that. So as I mentioned, you find that here I specifically started mentioning, I put the assumption, but I didn't put the risk because that should be part of the discussion which we currently have. But if you take a look for this program where I mentioned all the activities clearly, what happened, but I didn't put the assumption because I actually did a thorough diagnostic study, evidence synthesis brief, and existing theoretical framework. If for this program I only use Naila Kabir or Andrea Cornwall Women Economic Empowerment Framework, but both the framework are two different things, because where Naila's was more into this economic opportunities for women in the context, and Andrea Cornwall focused more in the household and the agency part, and Naila's context is actually linked with the agency. So then I club both the framework for my current program. So for these things, what I did a diagnostic study, I did a evidence synthesis review, then I come up with a framework which adopted for my program and can applicable to my program. And then I started building these activities and whole ToC. Do you have any question till now? Or I will just finish and then I can take a question. Ashwini?
I think we have one question, Kumar, that says, on what basis do we set the quantifiable benchmarks in the outcome section?
Okay, Moinak, there are two things. But as I mentioned, it's depend which area you are actually, which intervention landscape you are working. If you take a look, 1 minute, sorry, give me 1 minute. Yeah. If you take a look on this, in the whole area, you will find, because I work in the policy space in this intervention, my all conversations are look like a number of policy guidelines and come up, or number of conversations I am currently having, or number of research the policy stakeholders used, okay, or used or cite my name, okay. But when you opt for this one, 1 minute. Yeah. because this is a letter of a discussion point. See, for this outcome, because this is not in policy, this is more into understanding percentage point of increase of women earning and income. I start coming in the outcome category more into this quantifiable numbers. So any number you can quantify, in a sense, the number of guidelines you come up, but it's depend on the project. If it's a policy level, or if it's a policy level intervention, you put more emphasized on number of guidelines, number of conversations you are having, number of features, or the policy or R&D support you received, those kind of things. You can't, maximum time we avoid coming up with a percentage or quantifiable possibility. But when you are working like a proper increase of income or any like decrease in the maternal mortality kind of thing, then we start coming up with a proper percentage point. So see, for this, you will find here when I'm referring the LFA, I actually put all the things in the percentage, like percentage of women who participated in the household decision making, and then I put a proper description. When I'm referring the why, what do you mean by household decision making? I clearly mentioned okay, women with husband participated in child health care decision, major household purchase decision, and visit to the women's family or relative decision. So if these three things happen, then I can convey a women actually participate, and then I put a percentage. So it's very project specific. You can't say okay, every outcome should be or need to be quantifiable. It's not. But is it clarify your answer, Maina?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, another
Thank you
thing,
so much.
sorry. Another thing I forgot. You put benchmarking. So now
Yeah.
for the benchmarking, it can happen in two ways, Moina. One, just imagine okay, you are rolling out a countrywide program. Okay, like the routine immunization program. On that point of time, your benchmarking is suppose NFHS, the latest one, the NFHS 5. Okay, for the outcome, I know, okay, after 5 years, I want to, with 100% children need to be immunized. My outcome benchmarking should be like current one, like 96 or 97% currently Indian childs are immunized, not timely vaccinated. So those are the things. So it's very context specific, program specific, and at the same point of time, because if you are doing a baseline, from the baseline, you put those things for the benchmarking. Okay, because you conduct a baseline study, even you always don't require a baseline these days because you already have the available data, and the secondary data can be a substitute for your baseline when you are implementing a program with the government or not even the government in large scale. Okay.
Sure,
Hello.
that solves. Thank you so much.
Okay, so as I mentioned, okay, this is the thing, how you really need to read the theory of change, if, then, so that, and which will lead to then this. Okay, in a sense, but if I do this, then these things will happen. If these things happen, then so that, in a sense, maybe there is a reduction, and that reduction may improve the learning outcome. I use another example. So my overall goal is improved student learning outcome. Work backward, how you improve student outcome. Either you emphasize on teachers training, or otherwise you reduce the dropout, or students are more engaged in learning. So then what happens? Because you want to improve the outcome, you want to reduce, the first job is reduction in the dropout, and the second job should be look like students are engaged more in learning. So how could you do that? In a sense, if family send their children to school, so then every day automatically the dropout will reduce. Maybe the midterm will work for that, and n number of other possibilities. If you take a look on this one, because teachers are already skilled, but maybe the way they are currently conducting the class teaching is not at all that effective. So for this, what you did, you started upskilling the teachers in the new appropriate teaching methods. But again, do remember, again, I point one thing, because for your consideration, when you are stating, okay, we need to improve student learning outcomes by emphasizing on teachers training, that teachers training can also have different theories of change itself. In a sense, if you, in a sense, why I'm saying this, because Teachers training can happen in two ways. You directly train your teacher. At the same point of time, you create a master trainers pool, and the master trainers pool actually implement the program. But on both cases, you don't have the control how teacher will engage. So for even if you want to improve the student learning outcomes, you can have n number of possible theory of change within your program to elaborate, to understand if it's actually be in the logical direction or not. Okay. Is there any question till now? Otherwise, I will opt for this logical framework.
There are no additional questions as of now.
Okay. So the next thing, as I mentioned, in the logical framework. Okay. So as I mentioned initially also on the theory of change, it's more into the larger vision kind of thing to which actually help you to achieve your goal. Logical framework is basically an analytical tool which you used particularly for our result-based management. And basically it's always offer us a systematic logical approach for designing project, which actually help the program management people or the decision makers to take a decision, right decision properly. So, and also at the same point of time, logical frameworks are able to identify and illustrate the relationship between program input, output, and outcome. I will clarify what I'm actually trying to mean by this in much later stage. And at the same point of time, what logical framework is basically helpful, as I mentioned, it's basically considered for planning a successful project and ensure that basic premises are probed extensively and our interlinked key elements are analyzed systematically so that necessary, significant, and relevant information is provided to decision makers for arriving at a well-designated project. And there are times people may ask you, why use a LFA for your current program, methodological framework analysis or approach, whatever you prefer, because it ensures that activities undertaken are tied to the organization objectives. You remember I mentioned, but the theory of change can have a larger impact at the organization level or also the program level. So the LFA actually tied up with your organization vision and mission or objective. It at the same point of time, it ensure potential risks are mitigated and what resources are required to implement or achieve the desired result. And at the same point of time, logical framework actually facilitate regular discussion to achieve a agreed outcome. Okay. So now, what I'm trying to do now, in a sense, you remember here in the ToC part, I actually come up with impact, long-term outcome, program outcome, key output, and intervention, like even like input, output, intermediate outcome, long-term outcome, and goal. Here for the logical framework section, what I thought it may helpful for our discussion to put those things put in proper place for your own program, where I put proper output, then outcome level indicator, then impact level indicators. And you will find, okay, I put like random number or random unit of measurement and indicator details. So if you take a look on the output, you will find, because it's a program to improve students' learning outcome, what I did, I may want to conduct training session both for teachers and both for students. Okay. And what happened, maybe in the baseline I didn't conduct any training session, but I started putting the number of training session I conducted based on the planned and actual, and then what I need to do in the end line. At the same point of time, I put like the outcome level activities and then the impact level indicators. Like I mentioned here, by outcome level, I clearly mentioned teachers successfully implemented interactive teaching strategies learned through the training. You remember I mentioned as an output what I did, number of teachers got received training or number of training session I conducted. Maybe now because of this training, teachers started implementing those, and I started coming up with average student participated or interactive learning activities conducted. I think someone asked where you need to quantify these numbers, and I mentioned you can quantify numbers, but you really need to know what need to present where. Like, say, in this whole outcome category, few of the details are in a sense in the percentage point, and few are in number of in proper absolute numbers, not in the percentage where, yeah. And then what I said, long term, because of this outcome, there is a change. So this whole LFA is actually put all the details properly, which actually help you in long run to track and plan properly and understand your actual achievement. In a sense, where theory of change actually in the larger picture, LF actually come down to your project level or activity level and start helping you out to understand all the details. Okay. So this is the same way I come up with another template for your own consumption. Like I put down the objective, then indicators, then unit of measurement, frequency by when I want to collect everything, and then baseline, endline, midline, and assumption kind of thing. And what are the data sources? So every organization have their own sets of template for their LFA, but LFA works always together, like output, outcome, impact. Okay. Same way, because you remember I mentioned that women and digital literacy. So this is another template where I mentioned specifically outcome one, women and agency. And within outcome one, I have 4 sub outcome. Number 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. Someone referred like percentage of women with income earning make decision, while the 1.4 percentage of time spent on unpaid domestic and care work, or percentage point of women who participate in business decision making. So what I did in this template, this is more or less same like output, outcome, and impact level, but I clearly mentioned what do you mean by this indicator and how I actually measure that, and even I define women and agency. There are times people may ask you, what do you mean by women and agency, and what do you mean by agency? For a very good LFA, it always helpful to put down and clearly mention what's for your program needed and all sorts of details. And then I put the responsibility, which is a program team always feel, okay, is it a district team will collect the data or a third-party organization collect the data, baseline, then year 1, year 2, year 3, and target, and then means of verification. And you remember someone asked me for the benchmarking. It's depend on the baseline and based on the current existing work, and then you come up with the benchmark things. Okay. Same again, I use the same template in a different format. See this, where I put the plan versus actual. So it's totally depend on you how you want to use and narrate your LFA. But the always better if you put all sorts of minute details. Okay, anyone take a look on the LFA document and understand what you mean by that, and nobody need to ask you question, hey, what do you mean by this indicator? See this indicator, like as an outcome indicator, I mentioned the first indicator is percentage of women with income or earning usually make decision about how their income or earning are used. So I mentioned in the description what respondents are considered to have control over their own earnings if they participate in decision alone or jointly with their husband about their own earning will be used. So for everything, we come up with a different sort of description. So I don't need to ask you, okay, hey Kumar, could you please let me know what do you mean by this indicator? You already have a description of it. And then you put the assumption and all this information available with you. Okay, now the last section discuss the theory of change and the log frame. And now I thought it's better to clarify the differences. As I mentioned previously, remember, logical framework actually illustrate a program component, and creating one help moments for the stakeholder perspective to identify like the output, outcome, input, activities, or require identifying program component. So at a glance, you have the full picture and you sync with it. In a sense, if you take a look on this picture, you understand what I'm trying to mention. Though you don't have all sort of activity details, all other information, you take a look on things, you understand what I want to achieve, what are the things I'm referring as an intermediate outcome, or immediate outcome, or output level things. So in this graphical representation actually help you to understand your larger program objective with a clear-cut understanding. Can anyone take a look and understand what we are referring without having any clear picture? But LFA actually explain you how, why things are exactly. And then I actually discuss when to use LFA and ToC. In a sense, if you take a look on this last section I mentioned, so something they can really understand at a glance, which is basically LFA, and demonstrate output indicators, and ToC design a complex initiative and want to have a rigorous plan for success and evaluate appropriate outcomes. Those are the things I mentioned here. And then, because we are run out of time, and I want to spend 15-20 minutes if you have any question one. So as I mentioned in the terminology, you will come across this terminology throughout your work on ToC or block frame, and then I try to explain it for you. In a sense, I put input, activity, output, intermediate outcome, or long-term outcome or outcome, impact, what do you mean by indicators. As someone asked, a risk or assumption, what do you mean by assumption, also context, goal, and objective. Now, two things for your consideration. One, because we discussed, but there are two things people used. One is the result-based management, RBM tool, another one is a log frame tool. It's depend on the donor which tool they want to prefer. Few of the areas you will find people said input, then from input they put activity, from activity is output, output will lead to outcome, and then impact. And when they refer input, will maximum find they mention the human, financial, or material resources, but their activities are different. But when you're referring in the log frame, we clearly understand that the finance or human capital or whatever materials we want to use is available. And then based on that, we initiate our activity. And that activity will help us to get our desired output or outcome or impact. Another thing, as I mentioned, because there are times when you are developing a ToC or a log frame, maximum time you don't have enough time. So for this, what happened, you don't consider to take a look, because you don't have time to take a look or to understand the context, not the background, and also at the same point of time, the evidence part of it or the theoretical framework. I would request, if you have time or the flexibility in your organization, before drafting the ToC, better to come up with a framework document where you synthesize the existing evidence, data point, and the narrative framework, and then start building your ToC. So like this way. What I did, I actually used different examples where I can facilitate, in a sense, to help you to understand what I'm referring by this area. And the last one, 1 minute, yeah. I mentioned the context part, and goal and objective, you all have the details. So I'm not talking what do you mean by goal or objective, but I thought to put all this terminology and the details here. And then the list of, oh, sorry, do you have any question till now? Because I will spend more 5 minutes on the list of resources. Let me know. Some input, video, that I don't have information, but we can get back to you on that, Ram. Any other question till now to understand the difference between LFA or ToC or on the examples I used? Hello. Okay.
Yeah,
So
no
then I think,
questions.
Okay, so then I can use this list of resources. So now on the whole list of resources, you will find there are better evaluation, LTS, World Bank, 3I kind of thing. I already, though Ashwini will share the slides with the participation, these are all hyperlinked. So it will take you either to the Theory of Change portal, or otherwise it will take you to the monitoring and evaluation guidelines portal, where you will get to know about all sorts of theory of change or the documents. But I would request you to take a look on the last one, Howard White. When 3I established, it's one of the best working paper I ever read by Howard White on the whole theory-based impact evaluation principles and practice. And this working paper, you will get to know what I'm referring. He used, I still remember, Bangladesh Nutrition Program, and with that he clarified what each and every step and why you need a theory of change for any impact evaluation. That is one of the helpful book, and another helpful working paper. You can just opt for the 3IA website. You can download this. Another one I would request to take a look on the UNICEF one. So what UNICEF did, UNICEF come up with like 7 different sets of document, mainly on monitoring and evaluation, and one of them by Patricia Rogers, sorry, on the whole theory of change. It's a very useful handbook, and if you have time, take a look on that. That would be helpful for you. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Question and answer.
Thanks a lot, Kumar. I think now we can open the floor for any questions. Yeah, so please feel free to leave them on the chat. Yeah, or you could also raise your hand to ask them directly. I think meanwhile, while the questions do come in, I'd just like to bring up, I think, the initial thing that I'd mentioned on the masterclass before. So we will be sharing more information about the masterclass through email, definitely. And it'll be more practical, hands-on. It'll also be for a limited set of participants, in the sense we will be sharing the framework of LFA and ToC through email as well. And all those of you who are interested, if you all could put together the theory of change as well as LFA for your programs and share it with us, we'd be happy to review them and provide guidance. We'll also be sharing the interest form to our masterclass, and yeah, happy to have you join us for that. But in case there are any questions now, we'd be happy to take that, yeah, for the next 10-15 minutes. There's one from Mamta.
Yeah, Mamta. Mamta, it's not what I'm thinking in a sense. Yep, you can. What I'm thinking in another way, you can share a like background document, or if you really want to share your ToC and LFA, we can review that in the next session, which will be basically for the limited participant. We can discuss that and how to improve that. We can guide that also. That's also possible. Do you need to add counterfactual in LFA for effective examining? See, it's not always need a counterfactual unless you really want to know the improvement happened because of your program. But now there is a huge amount of literature which talks over the contribution analysis, okay, rather than attribution. So think through when you are, even for your own program, when you are referring, you need counterfactual, but when you are explaining it, it should be contributory rather than attributory. We can do one thing when Ashwini shared another email with this link and all other, I can put together a few of the things that you really need counterfactuals to prove your area, or even if you have the counterfactuals, can you explain it by contribution or by attribution? So for effective M&E, it's not, but you can, it's better if you have budget, but better to start thinking in that contributory analysis perspective. What is the next question? I love hello, we'll be sharing the presentation. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. Is there any other thing? How important it is to involve stakeholders in defining LFA. It's very important. I remember when I'm referring the play pump story, I clearly mentioned poor planning, stakeholder consultation. Suppose just imagine you are rolling out a program with your partners, but your partners are not aligned with your program goal, output, impact, input, whatever it is. So when you're developing the LFA, you can do two-way job. One, you actually create that, if you don't have time, share that with your partner or budget, share that with partner for their feedback and then finalize. But if you have budget, the best possible way is always to put all the teams together at one day and then start having discussion and finalize the LFA. That way, your partner will also be able to understand the LFA and the nature of the program, and later on, you can actually avoid any problem or challenges. What are the last good thing? Important stakeholders here. That's what could be the ideal process? Yeah, the ideal process, in a sense, for developing an LFA, it's better you sit down with the program team, implementation team. If you have partners who are implementing the program, and you itself, if you are an M&E person, and finalize that. That actually a good, in a sense, ideal scenario. What tools are available online for designing LFA or ToC of organization? Okay, Dipesh, available online designing LFA. As I mentioned in the list of resources, if you take a look on the DFID and UNICEF one, you will find a good handbook how to develop the log frame and all other things that help you to get a full picture, both at the LFA and the ToC side. And another thing is there is a center itself called Center for Theory of Change. And you can take a look on their website, and they come up with pretty good tools on organization level thing, ToC, how to develop that. The name of the center is, I'm writing it down 1 minute, Center for Theory of Change. Center for Theory of Change. Yeah, this one. 1 minute. Okay, organization. Kumar wanted to know why play pump failed in scaling. Okay, Mamta, I didn't share the whole failure story. Okay, apart from mapping the kids area underground, no, it's not. Maybe you implement the program without having a proper understanding. If I'm actually interested to play after 3 months, so that means the consultation. In the pilot phase, what they did, they implemented, because it's a new initiative, kids got interested and kids started playing. But after 3 months, because I'm reluctant, I'm not willing to play with that. And there can be another possibility. Adults are not willing to play on that. You know how social norm structured. Another thing was play pump is huge, expensive, and they didn't have a proper OEM maintenance and operational guidelines in place. All these things actually, because of that, it's got failed. I would request, take a look another very good case study if you are interested. Why development intervention fail? It's on the WHP one. World Health Partners implemented a program in UP called Bihar called Sky Clinic. take a look on the last evaluation, what Manoj Mohanan did, and you will find they already mentioned the program didn't give any desired outcome at all. I'm noting it down. It's WHP Sky Clinic, Manoj Mohanan, and you should also read the WHO bulletin. They clearly mentioned the development intervention got failed. And another one is the very good example is the Jeffrey Sachs Millennium Village Project. Millennium Village Project is also not that successful that way it got hyped. So even if you have proper idea in mind, but maybe that intervention got failed because of n number of other reasons. 1 minute. What are the last question? Play palm, availability on the Mamta, I hope I answered your question. Kindly fill out. Okay, is there any other question? Sorry. Okay. Okay, one is World Health. I'm noting it down. Partners, Sky Clinic in Bihar. Even that program got Scholar Award back in 2014, and it received huge amount of funding from Gates, like 25 million for implementing that program for within 3 years, but that program got failed. You can take a look on that WHO bulletin or impact evaluation of Sky Clinic by Manoj Mohanan, which I actually mentioned earlier. Okay. Is there any other question? Okay. So then I have a last request, because it would be helpful if you provide your feedback and let us know where I can also support and improve the session. But I would request keep one thing in mind, because this is more technical, but in the next session, which will be more into hands-on experience, you will get to know the whole, how to develop your own ToC and log frame approach. Okay.
Thanks, Kumar. Thanks a lot for facilitating our session today. Yeah, I don't think there are any more questions coming in. But yeah, we've also circulated the feedback form. Request all to please take 2 minutes out and fill that up. It'll help us conduct more such sessions in the future. We've also put in a question expressing your interest for our masterclass. So do fill in your response for it. But yeah, in case there are no more questions, I think we could close. Would that be okay, Kumar?
So should I mute myself? Okay, yeah, it's perfectly fine. Thanks everyone for taking a part in this conversation.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
We'll share the session recording, presentation, resources, as well as more information on our masterclass in a follow-up. Thank you. Thanks.